Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Mayor, how are you?
Mayor, how are you doing today?
Well, and in the message she sent to me, which you'll see,
Excuse
it
me.
goes to great pains to describe the relationship, right?
What's that?
Because he can't come out and say, as a resident. So he emailed me and said, it's the alder who represents my property.
Because he bought it from Auction Eastern and Somerville.
Yeah, and in fact, he did say
Hello,
in his
Brad.
message that
Can you hear
it's
me?
likely to be sold.
Bill, I can hear you.
We'll start with the roll call.
Nairo,
Here.
Ramsey,
Here.
Kuhn,
Here.
Olson. Here. All present.
Okay, thank you. First item of business is the minutes of the January 17th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting.
This is Alder Cute. I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments, corrections? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the January 17th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Next item is the audit of the bills to be paid. Did we also have credit cards? Yes?
Yeah, there are the regular accounts payable and credit cards, and then there are also 3 additions this evening.
Okay,
Those 3 additions are Business Communication Solutions. That's the final payment for printing and mailing tax bills. The amount is $142.24. And then we have 2 additional first installment TIF incentive payments. First to Middleton Express LLC for the Holiday Inn Express project, $44,043.95. And then the second one is for the Trada development to WHPC Parmenter Middleton LLC, $159,099.86.
okay. And the only printout I had in my box is the unpaid invoice report for February 7th. So does somebody have, do we need anything else to sign?
I will get a copy for you after the meeting. That I
Okay.
can pass around.
All right, thank you, and my apologies. All right, do I hear a motion?
Ramsey will move to approve.
This is Alder Keno, second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the audit of the bills to be paid with the 3 additions that Bill mentioned, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it, and we'll get the other sheets for the alders to sign later. And I just want to acknowledge, we are using our new technology, so it's going to take a little getting used to, like when the screen changes, and I'm not expecting it, so we're all in this together. All right, moving on to resolutions. The first one is Resolution 2023-04, providing for the sale of approximately $4,600,000 in general obligation promissory notes. Oh.
And for this item, we do have Brad Degood from Baird attending, who can provide a short presentation on the planned financing for this year and is available to answer any questions.
Okay, why don't we go to Brad's presentation first then, and then we'll entertain a motion after that. Hello, Brad.
Hello, thank you. I'll walk through the presentation that was distributed with your agenda and certainly answer any questions that you may have. I start the presentation with an overview of interest rates. I just wanted to provide a historic context from where we were 1 year ago, where we were at the end of last year, and where we are today, or as of the end of January. The bottom line on this graph represents tax-exempt municipal interest rates from end of January of 2022, that gray dashed line. Well, fast forward to the end of December, and that entire line shifts to the top. It's the dotted line, that sort of that purplish color. That's where municipal rates were on December 27th, or an index of municipal rates. Now, rates since then have dropped, and we're really, for the second half of January through the end of January, we're on the 2 solid lines that are in the center of this graph. I looked back where the city had locked in rates last year. We were in the market in February last year, and you locked in at a 1.92%. Today, rates are obviously higher than they were last year, but the trend is in the right direction. We've seen rates drop, as I reflected here, since the end of the year, and even before that, rates really peaked right around October, November of last year. So I've got penciled in an estimated rate on the following page of 3.19. Now, I'm a little bit conservative, or estimating high on that interest rate. If this were on the market today, I would expect to be a little bit below 3% for this financing, maybe closer to 2.90. So just by way of summary, this is a general obligation promissory note, $4.6 million. It would fund $3.1 million of your general capital projects, and then $1.5 million for Pheasant Branch Creek Trails and Bridge project. And we've got an 8-year repayment. So the final principal payment is scheduled for 2031. And that's consistent with the notes that the city has issued for the past several years. Statutorily, you're allowed to go out up to 10 years on notes like this, but the city has a practice of repaying this debt really quite rapidly. And then the first interest would be scheduled for September of this year. In terms of a timeline on the bottom of this page, with the committee's authorization tonight, this resolution would go in front of the finance or the council for action. Baird, along with city staff, would continue to make preparations for the issuance of the debt. So that includes completing the official statement, which is the offering document surrounding the notes. We'd secure a bond rating. We're working on a formal presentation to Moody's Investor Service. We're working on that right now. We've got a call scheduled in the next week or so to present that. And then Baird would continue marketing the obligation to investors nationwide. I'd be at the meeting, council meeting, finance and council on March 7th. And it's on March 7th that rates would be finalized. We would finalize everything during the day and present that in form of an award resolution for committee and council action on the 7th. And then the closing would take place on March 28th. Now we've updated the long-term financing plan on the next page. And this plan follows really the practice that was established over the past several years. The existing levy supported debt is reflected on the left-hand side of the page. The boxed-in area details the principal and interest payments for this new issue. There's an offset from impact fees that would be applied. And then there's a placeholder for future debt service, that's future principal and interest payments on annual borrowings of $4 million. So this is here for planning purposes, and it's, like I said, it's a placeholder. You're not being asked to authorize any future financings tonight. You're just being asked to authorize us to proceed with the 2023 financing. Each year, there'd be a separate authorization for any capital borrowing. But the reason we're reflecting this debt service then is really shown on the far right-hand column. We've got a repayment structure where the city is gradually stepping into increases through 2027. And by 2027, you'll see that there's a reduction in what's currently your existing debt. We're able to take advantage of those downward steps. Then you'll see that the debt moderates in 28, 29, and the debt payments drop, about $1 million by 2030 compared to where they are in 2027. So that allows flexibility to layer in future capital needs if the city decides to move forward with any significant, say, one-time capital expenditures. There's a place there where we could layer those expenditures in the form of debt financing without seeing a significant spike in the overall debt service payments, the tax levy to taxpayers. This plan is really the same concept of a plan that we've presented to the committee for the past, probably 3 or 4 years. So I'd be glad to go into more detail if anybody has questions, or I can answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Any questions for Brad? I have a question for Jeremy. Is it possible to turn the volume up a little bit on people speaking? Thank you, because I think, if I'm correct, the speakers are in the monitors. So for everyone out there, it might be good. For us back here, it's a little faint. Brad, it doesn't seem like we have any questions for you, which is
Okay.
good. Will we see you back here on March 7th, or no, you'll just report through Bill?
You'll see me back. I'll be back to answer, to report out on the final results and to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Why don't you stick around while we entertain a motion? Who would like to make a motion?
Motion to approve. This is Alder Keen, I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution 2023-04, providing for the sale of approximately $4,600,000 general obligation promissory notes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you, Brad.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the second resolution, which is 2023-05, authorizing the reappropriation of 2022 capital project fund carryovers to 2023 and related budget adjustments. I would like to move approval for the purpose of discussion and preparing a recommendation to council, but I'll tell you, I do have a suggested amendment.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll second that.
All right, thank you. So Bill, do you want to give us just a brief synopsis of the two chunks of money that we're talking about tonight?
Yes, this is the annual process where we look at the unspent funds in our capital projects funds, which are divided into public works 412, public lands 414, and general capital projects 416. So if we look at the 2022 budget.
Sorry, Bill, I'm going to interrupt you
Yep.
because I'm seeing you on the screen. I don't know if this makes a difference, but his microphone's muted.
Yep, Bill needs to stay muted.
He needs to stay muted. Okay.
Yep,
So
we're
it's
hearing
picked
him
up here.
loud.
not on the computer.
Keep asking him.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yep, no problem. So we start by looking at the adjusted budget for 2022, plus any adjustments for revenue variations or prior year excess funds that were applied. And then look at the expenditures year to date or that are pending, and subtracting those available funds minus the expenditures leaves us available budget balances of $4,631,422. Of that amount, $4,245,402 is being recommended for carryover for specific projects where projects are in place or ongoing, and departments have requested the carryover authority to continue spending on those projects in 2023. That leaves a balance of excess funds of $386,020. And I did want to note that usually when we look at the capital carryovers, that also represents actual cash on hand. However, this year, that amount of the remaining budget authority includes both the actual cash in fund balance as well as anticipated revenues that are still coming in for those projects. The largest of those is for the Pheasant Branch Creek Trails and Bridges project. The borrowing issue that we're going through tonight includes $1.5 million of borrowing for that project. We also have a county grant and FEMA funds that we're anticipating that will be applied for that project. And then there are a couple of other grants receivable that will be reimbursement grants that once we incur the expenses and submit all the paperwork, we'll get reimbursement in. So that total of sources, the fund balance and those revenues represents that 4.6 million in recommended carryover budget authority. And then the recommendations before you this evening are to carry over the 4.6 million for specific projects. And then the staff recommendation for the remaining 386,000 is to apply 100,000 of that to the library restroom and plumbing project. That was a 2023 capital request for a total of 200,000 that was not funded as part of the 2023 budget. I believe there was some discussion of looking and seeing what may be available for funds at year end. So the recommendation from administration is that we apply 100,000 to that, and potentially the library board could consider if they wanted to apply a portion of library fund balance to cover the remaining costs for that project. That would leave remaining excess funds of $286,020. And our recommendation would be to add that to the vehicle and equipment replacement fund. I have included in the memo here the summary from the vehicle replacement plan that was in the budget document. We've been budgeting and spending approximately $500,000 per year, but we do know based on the cycle of our vehicles that there are some higher cost years coming up in 2025 through 2027, where we have the replacement of 3 patrol trucks or the snowplow vehicles and a street sweeper coming up within those 3 years. So this recommendation would be to take the existing balance, add this to that vehicle replacement fund to try to moderate the level that we would need to increase the annual borrowing for that fund over those future years.
Thank you, Bill. And then just to explain, so the motion that I would like to make is that we approve, or that we recommend to council that council approve the $4,245,402 in carryover for capital projects, allocate the $100,000 in excess funds to the library bathroom project as recommended by staff, but then leave $286,020 unallocated in the capital projects budget. And that's simply because I greatly appreciate and respect the administration's recommendation, but we don't have to act now to earmark that money in any way. And it seems prudent to maybe put that remainder in an unallocated status, because it could be at the end of the year during the budget process, we will move that into vehicle replacement fund, but there might be other things that come up. And I just felt like it maybe needed a little bit more thought and consideration before we make a decision. Alder Kuhn.
Are you thinking of something like a roof leaking or an HVAC system? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, or, just other, originally I talked to Bill earlier about putting it in our general contingency fund. And he said that's one option, but leaving it as unallocated in the capital projects would leave it there for those projects and give us a little more flexibility.
Thank you
Alder
for
Olson.
sharing that.
We already have some funds already allocated in that vehicle replacement fund, correct? We've been doing that consistently.
Yep.
And we're seeing that there's going to be a shortfall.
Yeah, we do. So looking at the summary in the yellow box here, the beginning balance going into 2023 is 734,000 approximately. Each year you can see the budgeted amount. Tentatively here, it's shown the recommendation to add the 286,000 in excess. We get some revenue coming back from trade-in or sale of vehicles. Then we subtract out the planned replacements for each year, and then it shows the projected ending balance. So we do have funds in that plan for 2023 and 2024. The potential issue comes in 2025 when we have some of those larger vehicle purchases, and you can see the total projected cost of vehicles is about 1.2 million in that year. So that's the thought process of adding some funds in anticipation of those higher cost years coming up.
I've never seen a shortage of things people can ask for. So I'm just saying that if it's not allocated, people will be, let's, how about this, how about this? And this is an important fund that we do keep ahead of. I do have some other questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. One question, Sean, maybe you can answer this one for me. With the rail spur in the industrial park, we did an emergency order to allocate some funds, but nothing, it's not that big of an emergency. There's still funds waiting at the end of this year yet. It wasn't addressed, correct?
We actually used a portion of this project's funds for those emergency repairs.
Okay,
So this is effectively what was left over from what had been allocated.
right. But you want to carry it forward. There's more repairs to do here.
There are, right?
This is you just did the absolute necessity to get it back to where it was. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. I just knew that there was an emergency order and I didn't know how an emergency order left funds yet. So that makes sense. I do have some more questions.
Go ahead.
Just to keep right on going here. And Kylie, last night you were talking about the aquatic center and having some funds left over, but there's funds here. It's not a lot of money, but it's $2,000 that you're turning back over. It's just like a separate project category thing, or you've got a much bigger amount you want to carry forward from the ARPA funds, correct? But this one is something that you're willing to go. So it's $2,020.
And make sure you turn on the microphone.
That's a lot of concession stand.
Okay, it's on. Yeah, so I discussing those carryovers with Bill. We went through that and wanted to put that back in because we did have a lot of carryover for the ARPA funds to utilize those first. So I don't know if Bill if you have anything else to add to that, but.
Yeah, I think this specific project is where leftover funds from here. And then for the 2022, there was carryover of ARPA funds and then the budget allocation for 2023. So I think the thought was
Okay.
use the ARPA funds first
And this one is
to make
okay.
these available for general capital.
Then there's a little bit left that's going to be carried over for strategic planning. What else do we have to do on the strategic planning? Is that just an update?
My understanding is that that is the remaining amount for our final payment under the contract for the street.
Yeah, but there's no other action items as it relates to the
It's
contract.
already billed and everything will be good with that. And my last question. Okay. there's a line item here for library tuck pointing, and there was $11 used, and there's like the 25,000 left. Is that something, Jocelyn, that they're still going to do, or it's going to be carried over? Is it just hard to get somebody who wants to do that work, or?
I'm curious, what did $11 buy?
Yeah, exactly. You can't even buy.
I think that was a bid advertisement.
Oh,
Yes, library tuck pointing is still happening. So yes and yes. This is a project that was planned for pre-pandemic, and we're just coming back to pick that up. And it's being led by Jim.
okay, okay. So it's still happening.
Yes.
Okay. Just didn't know if anybody was not willing to do that. Okay, thank you.
So,
for indulging me.
Jocelyn, while you're there, could I ask you, why is it, it's hard to find people, or it has been, as you said, quite a while, we have been wanting to do it. So what is stopping it?
Sure. Jim could probably speak to that a little more specifically than I could, but I know that this size of project isn't substantial enough to really make a contractor a lot of money. And so it's the type of project that they would use as a fill-in between larger jobs. And so it was just difficult to find somebody that could do that wasn't tied up with larger jobs. And then to schedule it was also a challenge.
So while you're there, could I ask you that $100,000 would go a long way in fixing the library issues?
Yes. So we have a quote back from one of our asks for 195,000. So it came right on under the 200,000 estimate. Anything that we would use the library fund balance for requires board action. And we would want to be careful that we're not getting into the habit of using fund balance for entirely capital projects, because that fund balance was originally allocated as operating. And so it should really go towards services. So when we're looking at the use of library fund balance, we're always looking at one-time things that could either start an initiative or expand a service. So that way we're getting the most from a service perspective out of those funds.
Okay, thank you.
But you do have that was one question I had. Bill, you made it sound like we haven't just, we don't know for sure if the library is going to fund until the other remainder.
That is correct. Yep. I just put this, I spoke with Bill before this meeting, and we chatted about that strategy. I feel like that's a good compromise and a good way to come halfway. And this will be an agenda item on Tuesday's board meeting for them to discuss and take action on the direction we'll take.
Does part of our motion want to be, if the board decides not to move forward with that project, only with the $100,000, that we bring that funds back, and what we would do with it at that time?
Well, that might be another reason to leave the $286,020 unallocated at this time, because that would be that we could, for instance, tonight earmark $100,000 or $200,000 for the project and eliminate the uncertainty.
No, we're trying to earmark 100,000.
Right. That was part of my original motion, was to, or the amendment that I previewed, was to allocate $100,000 in excess funds to the library project, and the remaining $286,020 leave unallocated.
I'm even more convinced that we have to allocate it towards vehicles, because otherwise we're just going to eat that up. There's a perfect example of how that gets chipped away, and wouldn't go to the vehicle.
Are you saying you wouldn't want the library bathroom project to go forward if
I'd like to put it forth that we would do 100,000 and see how that sets with the library board.
Okay, well, and that is what my suggestion was. I just feel like, again, it's not to say that the 286,000 won't go to the vehicle replacement fund eventually, but I'm mindful that this council, the previous council, was very concerned about tying the hands of a future council on one issue in particular. And it seems like we're going to have a new council. We have, of course, everybody would love to propose ideas for how to spend the 286,000 that isn't going to be earmarked for the library. But this council or the next one will have to decide whether or not to.
The budget for this year. So I mean, that's going to be, what's in our contingency fund, right?
The city's general contingency. My memory is that it was approximately 130,000 for 2023.
Okay, and we were thinking like 100,000 would be. good enough number?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that with the final budget adjustment related to the EMS fee increases, so that's when we bumped it from the 100 to 130 approximately. But with the caveat that the EMS thing, there was a lot of uncertainty there of where that's going to end up.
Yes.
So I have two questions. One
I'm
is.
just going to ask Alder Ramsey.
Oh, okay.
since He hasn't weighed in.
Yes.
Just patiently
He's
listening.
paid.
I know that's hard to believe. I see both sides of it. The vehicle replacement, we've tried very hard over the years to make sure that we fund our vehicles and we know that there are added expenses coming. And we also know those added expenses are due to the kind of vehicles that we want, that I think we're gonna find more expense. I understand your idea of the contingency or the unallocated, so I can see both sides of it. So I really feel as though for me, I would take and split that money up, and I don't care how it's done, 100 and what do we have, 286,000, put 100,000 into contingency, 186,000 into the vehicle replacement fund, but I'd like to see some money go into the vehicle replacement fund.
That's a good compromise.
Okay.
Hit her on that.
And when you say your rough number was 100,000 in contingency, you mean leave that unallocated or put it in contingency?
What gives us the most flexibility, Bill? What would be the best way to do it?
I would recommend that you keep that in the capital project fund, either as unallocated or if you had a capital project contingency, but I wouldn't recommend mixing that with the general fund. Since this is funds that originally came from borrowing, we want to keep that for capital.
Sure.
Good sense.
Then there's your answer. Unallocated.
So 100,000 unallocated. And,
And then $186,020 to the vehicle replacement fund.
okay, and Mayor, did you have one more comment?
Yeah, so Bill, where is that money coming from Dane County for the North Mendota Trail? That was $1 million, so not much has been spent. And I don't see it here. Is it that you first spend and then ask them to pay for it, or what is it?
For that project, we've been able to submit reimbursement requests as we incur spending. So instead of waiting until the project's over and requesting the full million, we can request pieces of that going forward. And I know we did receive our first reimbursement for expenses in 2022. And if we look at and I apologize, this is a little small, but the North Mendota Trail East segment line. So the budget, originally the city portion, the capital budget was 200,000, and then there was $1 million in county funding. So this adjustment of the 357.62 is based on additional reimbursements and revenues that we have submitted. So the carryover amount that's listed of 169,103, that is just the portion of the city's budget minus the revenues. So I guess to say that a little bit more simply, we have been getting revenue reimbursement as we've gone through. So the carryover would be a portion of the city's share of that, and we'll continue to submit revenue requests for reimbursement as the project continues.
So why there shouldn't be 200,000? Where did we spend that 31? I mean, that should be all county expense, right? County pays first, and then only then, if we need to spend some, we spend it.
The city council approved $200,000 in city funds in addition to the $1 million from the county.
Yep.
The way the grant works is we need to incur the expenses up front and then submit for reimbursement from the county. So that's essentially provided us some funding that we can use to make payments of bills until we get those reimbursements coming in.
Okay, so these are the upfront expenses, 31,000. So Jocelyn, I have one question for you that, did you get 3 quotations for the bathrooms, or is it just only one? And could you get 3, then we would know formally that what is going.
I got one and I was lucky to get one.
Is it possible to get the other 2?
It would, but I can guarantee it would delay the project by months.
Okay, all right, thank you. It would be good that if you could, because sometimes, there's a big difference between those quotations, and we could all save money, so.
Well, you put it out for bid, didn't you? And your only response was the one.
I think that's an answer. All right, then in the interest of time, so we can make a recommendation at the council meeting later, I'm going to amend my motion to say, move that the finance committee recommends that council approve $4,245,402 in carryover for capital projects, allocate $100,000 in excess funds to the library bathrooms project, $186,020 allocated to the vehicle replacement fund, and leave $100,000 unallocated.
Ramsey will second.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Let's move on to agreements and contracts. First, we have agreements with CGC, is it Gestra? And SES for 2023 testing services. This comes to us from Public Works.
Also now move approval.
I'll second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the agreements with CGC, Gestra, and SES for 2023 testing services signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The next one is the agreement with Middleton Cross Plains Area School District for School Resource Officer SRO program for 2023-2024.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll make that motion.
Also now second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I had a question and a request. The question is just approximately how much time do our officers spend on their SRO duties? Sorry, Chief.
Green button, right, Sean? Check that, check that.
Jeremy, am I on? Thank you. Like during their school year, they're there full time. That's their full assignments, Monday through Friday. When school's in session, we have the 2 SROs at the schools.
Okay, all right, thanks. And then my request is that when we sign, because I noticed this has already been signed by the school district, correct? So when we sign, I just think it's important to strike out the phrases his or her and his/her and replace those with their. Thanks, Chief. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agreement with Middleton Cross Plains Area School District for School Resource Officer or SRO program for 2023 and 2024 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Number 3, proposed maintenance agreement with MSA for maintenance inspections of private stormwater facilities. This is task order 23-111 from the Stormwater Utility Board.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. Any discussion?
I have a question. Why these 4 properties shown? I mean, those are all, I don't want to get those names. You already put it there. I'm sure you tried it. This sort of strange, right?
Well, we sent out letters and then we sent a second set of letters that said, this is your responsibility. Please do your job. And we did not get affirmative action. And so now I think we're in a position where we'll have to do something.
Yeah, it is very disappointing. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Well,
Coming out of the stormwater.
just to add to what Sean said, in each of these cases, we have a recorded, I hope it's recorded, restrictive covenant agreement with the owners, which specify that A, they are responsible, and B, if they don't do it, we'll do it, and we'll charge back the cost by special charge. So this is plain vanilla. It's going to happen. And it's going to be at their cost.
Correct. These are our stormwater management system maintenance agreements.
And on that note, well, Alder Ramsey was asking, this will come from the stormwater utility. Okay. And then my question then, Larry, maybe you need to answer this, or Sean, so making us whole as a city, that doesn't just involve paying for the work that needs to be done to these stormwater facilities to bring them into compliance. It also is, Sean, or, staff time. Do we collect on that too, or just the cost of?
Well, we're hiring a contractor, so it'll be easy to follow, but I do not know the answer whether the city, I don't believe it does traditionally, separate out staff time in a basis for recovery. Is that right, Sean?
I know when we do physical work, we have a surcharge for administrative overhead of city staff overseeing a contractor. This is us overseeing a consultant effectively. So this is professional services still, not backhoes showing up. But I don't know the answer to that question.
Certainly one worth asking though, because
Yeah.
but for the fact that they didn't do it, we wouldn't have these.
We wouldn't have had to write the letters or follow
Yeah,
up
I
or
mean,
hire anybody. Right.
Right. If it's just, we're hiring someone to go in and do the work and they really face no penalty, they're just paying at cost.
Yeah,
Seems like
I'll
maybe-
have to double check the structure of that to see once if the ordinance basis for doing this has that 15% tag on, which
Okay.
is normal for us.
And if it doesn't, I
Then we
would
should-
say
well,
this council would consider adding that.
brings
Then
back
we'll
to
need a
the- for-
different rule. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Any further questions for Sean? If not, all those in favor of approving the proposed maintenance agreement with MSA for maintenance inspections of private stormwater facilities signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to number 4, amendment to agreement for construction administrative services, public art and donor recognition display for Stone Horse Green. This comes to us from staff.
This is Olson. I'll make the motion to approve in the amount of 16,853 and using TIF 3 funds.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Alder Keen. I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Any
Second.
discussion? I had one question for Abby, and that is, I remember my predecessor's concern over the costs of Stonehorse Green going higher than he expected. So I have to, creeping, thank you. I have to ask, is there no other source of funds for this, or does this already reflect the use of other funds too?
This will require additional support from TIF District 3 funding. I am not aware of any additional funds. I think with the construction environment that we're working in and the delays on a few of the items, we've had to extend the length of time that Psyche is under contract and is obligated to be reporting to the city, going back out to the site as the contractor re-engages. For example, we got the delivery of the fireplace a couple weeks ago. So that required, Psyche to set aside additional time for the city project to be on site while that was being handled and to oversee that. So I think, while nobody wants to pay additional towards a project that's nearly completed, this is the right thing to do because they have, meticulously kept records. They've been on site every time that we've called them to be there. They've gone above and beyond in every way. And they, just like every construction project, can't have foreseen the material delays and the other challenges that we've faced with the project.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? All right, if not, all those in favor of approving the amendment to agreement for construction, administrative services, public art and donor recognition display for Stone Horse Green signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to number 5, amendment number 2 to agreement 18-127A with EOR for flood mapping services.
This is Alder Keen. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, and I will second it as a member of the Water Resources Management Commission. Any discussion? I just wanted to say that I'm very happy that EOR will be presenting to council an overview of the remapping process and the key issues to consider. I see that April 30th is the date before which all these services need to be completed. And so one request that I have is that we change the completion date to May 15th. And that's simply because it seems that we would want the incoming council to hear the presentation. And we could try to schedule the presentation for the date of April 18th, which is when those new alders will be sworn in, but I don't know if that leaves enough time for the work to actually be done. So I don't know if Sean, Is it all right to change that to May 15th?
I'm confident they wouldn't mind a little extra time and can work with that.
Okay. All right, so Alder Kuhn, would you like to amend your motion to add the change to May
Yes.
15th for the completion date?
And I appreciate the thoughtfulness. So yes, thank you.
And I approve for my second. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving amendment number 2 to agreement 18-127A with EOR for flood mapping services with a completion date of May 15th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to number 6, agreement with the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin Office of Energy Innovation for an energy innovation grant. This comes to us from staff. I'll move approval.
This is Alder Kuhn, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I really like the way this is set up, where you have the Public Service Commission putting some funds in and the owner of the building putting some skin in the game also. The city is providing the resource of staff time, but this is a much better use, and knowing that the Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corporation has a history of having long-term workforce housing available already. I think this is a great partnership.
I agree. It's a great partnership, and I want to say kudos to Kelly Hilliard for securing this grant. I saw that our partner WHPC is getting over $1 million in direct funding in addition to what we'll be providing. I wasn't aware that they have skin in the game. Maybe Kelly knows what that skin looks like.
Wasn't it 86,000 that they have to contribute?
Are they contributing the 80?
86,000 is what I was reading.
Yeah, Kelly, can you tell us who provides the $87,173 match?
I believe WHPC is providing that match. I'm not sure. I think it might come from foundations on their end for their portion of it. They're also doing the electrification part of this project, which is not part of the grant. So they're electrifying the building first with heat pumps and heat pump hot water heaters as well. And then the battery storage and solar is the grant part.
Okay.
Well, Kelly, since you're there, can I ask a couple questions? Staff time has to be matched as part of this, right? Do you think that this is something, I know you've asked for some support from like intern or something. Is that something they can help with, or is this going to come right on your shoulders?
Well, the match was not required. With these grants, there's never a match required, but I would say that a match sweetens the deal to get the grant, to secure the grant.
Said staff, there was something that you had to do something with staff.
There's a match required as part of the contract because that's how we filled out the grant. We offered the match to secure the grant. But my time is only limited staff time.
Okay.
And the rest of the match comes from our partners and won't be from the city. And we do have an intern currently who's helping us with engagement and outreach on both the Energy Efficiency Navigator program and this. But his time ends in the end of March. This project was slated to begin sometime early last year, but the Department of Energy reviewed our battery storage and solar initial designs because it's fairly new technology to put all of this together. And so the Department of Energy is using this round of grants as sort of a test case for other similar projects. So they spent almost a full year reviewing all the battery storage projects. So that's why it's delayed, and therefore we won't have an intern for the duration of this. But the Sustainability Committee did motion to approve some funds from their operating budget to provide for an intern at some point in the year. So we may be able to have a few hours for this from that.
Good for you. One quick question though. Do you know, thinking back to the Elevate NOAA grant, was this the same program? The PSC had put some funds into that for Madison. Is this the same grant that they were using for NOAA? Do you know offhand? Or?
It is the same grant program.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that Madison's grant money for that project in Madison came from a previous year a previous round of grants, but it was from the Office of Energy Innovation.
So this is some program that if we wanted to continue with the NOAA, that this would be a source of funds also potentially.
It could be. I think that the Innovation Office of Energy Innovation likes to fund things that are new, and so perhaps in the future it won't be as exciting to them, but we can always try.
Heavy on innovation. Okay, good, good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agreement with the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin Office of Energy Innovation for an energy innovation grant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to number 7, collateral assignment of TIF agreement 3810 Parmenter Phase 2.
Ramsey will move approval.
I'll second that.
Subject to city attorney approval.
Of course.
Subject.
The agreement's fine, but it's got blanks, it's got redlining that
Well,
hasn't been fixed.
yep.
It's just minor details.
Yep, and I had talked to Bill about that earlier, and he indicated we're approving the form and the language tonight, and then they'll come back to us later with the amounts filled in.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm sorry if I misrepresented. What I was thinking is that we would approve the form in concept and subject to city attorney, and that before they execute it, they would insert the dates and the dollar amounts
Okay.
once the financing is finalized.
that's better. Okay, so it is subject to city attorney review then. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the collateral assignment of TIF agreement for 3810 Parmenter Phase 2, subject to city attorney approval, can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to item 8, award of professional services contract for aerial spray for spongy moth control. This comes to us from PRFC.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll make that motion.
Zolt's now second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I have a question for whoever. So do we have the dates when they're going to spray? Because what they give you the dates once we give the contract?
No, it's purely based on phenology of trees and the caterpillars. So we have a general timeline of end of April, beginning of May. That's as close as we can get right now.
So there are 2 sites now. So the other one I wasn't aware of. It's close to the DAC.
Yeah, it's right on Park Street.
So there is a problem there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I had a question about that additional area as well. Why not get the area in between the 2 parcels, the Saks Woods and then down on Park?
They're based on the egg mass surveys that we conducted. There is really no need to connect that to it. It would just be excessive, if you will. There was no sign of significant egg mass populations in those areas. Really, that smaller parcel, it's only probably maybe about a dozen trees, and they are all old oak trees. And I saw it mainly because that's part of my run route in the summertime. I run out at lunch and they're just peppered really, really significantly. We didn't get any phone calls from any of the residents who live there. It's more just off of our own observations that we caught it. And so we'll spray that little pocket. But then, like I said, really what we found in the egg mass surveys was that it drops off really quickly. So even though we have a real high density spot there along Park Street, we have the other little oak grove right on the other side of the railroad tracks. There isn't anything. So it's one of those things where it's a small cell. We nail it now, and that should really nip it.
Okay.
Because if there's nothing there, it doesn't make any sense.
No,
Right.
it really doesn't.
All right.
Mark, can you refresh? You got a 50% grant or matching fund on this, and thank you for your work on that. But who is that coming from?
That's with the state DNR.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Stretch that out.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I never really did announce that. Yeah. We got the urban forestry grant for that. So that includes not just the gyps or the spongy moss spraying, sorry. But that includes updating of the remainder of the existing street tree inventory, as well as the establishment then of the gravel bed nursery system.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the award of professional services contract for aerial spray for spongy moth control signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to bids and quotes. We have one, and that is award of bid for the asphalt pump track construction project. Comes to us from PRFC.
Ramsey will move approval.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, Kylie, so you got only, or Mark, you got only one quote?
Mhm.
That's it?
Yep.
It's the number one country in the United States. They travel all over the United States doing it.
Yeah, it went out the Quest system, no different than the streets projects and whatnot. So it was out for over a month. We had a pre-qualification process for anyone who wanted to submit. Honestly, we had 3 other asphalt companies that submitted or that took out plans that wanted to submit. And obviously they don't have any experience with actually constructing of it. They just know the asphalt portion of it so that they'll be a subcontractor for the project. But yeah, American Ram Company, they're the preeminent one. They do projects nationwide.
And they would give you some sort of a timeline. I want to make sure that it gets done because, okay.
Yeah, we've already been in discussions with them. It will be that August, September range because they do book out about 9 to 12 months. So they have a placeholder in for us right
Okay.
now.
Well, let's make sure they give you the date and you hold them to it.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the award of bid for the asphalt pump track construction project signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Now we move on to miscellaneous, and we have 3. 2 of these items are going to be considered by council later. First one is consideration of request for state legislative action to extend the term of tax increment financing district number 5.
This is Olson. I'll move approval.
This is Alder Key, and I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? From what I understand, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, even if the legislature does pass this time, it doesn't mean we have to extend or amend, change the number of amendments. It just will preserve the flexibility for us to do that, correct?
Yep, that's correct. And if we wanted to take advantage of the additional time period, we would need a new project plan amendment that would have to be approved by the council and the joint review board.
Okay, thank you.
The first step.
Yep. All right. So do we want to then approve this recommendation to council? All those in favor of, well, are we voting? We don't need to vote. We just need to make a recommendation to council.
Yeah, I think there is a motion and a second to recommend to the council.
Okay. All right. So let's vote on that motion to recommend consideration of request for state legislative action to extend the term of tax increment finance district number 5. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to miscellaneous item number 2, ordinance to amend section 3.12 of the Middleton general ordinances relating to dog license fees. I am going to move that council refer this matter to LNO License and Ordinance Committee for a recommendation with justification regarding A, what specific fees should be for intact versus spayed or neutered dogs, and B, adding as required by Wisconsin statute 175.055, a $5 late fee per dog for licenses obtained on April 1 or later each year, with exceptions as needed for dogs acquired or moving into the city after that date.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I'll open up the discussion. So I just feel like this is a pretty small but significant change. I am not in favor of having the same fee for both intact and spayed or neutered dogs. The state law specifies a minimum $3 fee for spayed or neutered dogs, $8, so more than twice that fee for intact dogs. And I mean, there are obviously reasons for that. And when I moved here from Sheboygan in 2017, I was surprised we didn't have a $5 late fee and we didn't have an April 1st deadline. And I thought it was just Middleton being really nice, like how I don't have any fines at the library ever. And much to my surprise, when I was researching different fees for different types of dogs, I realized this is part of Wisconsin statutes that we are supposed to be charging this fee. So I think this is a good referral to L&O. I appreciate the folks in L&O taking this up if it goes through council. And that's all I had to say about it. Any
question? Now this, and maybe you know, Troy, I don't know. This is Dane County's fees. Now we're trying to mimic what Dane County is doing. Is that correct?
According to Dane County's website, they have different fees for intact and spayed or neutered dogs. They also have different fees for veterans, seniors.
It says due to increases in Dane County.
Yeah, we collect a fee and then a portion of that is paid to Dane County. And the fee we pay to Dane County is different for spayed neutered or non-spayed or neutered. This was a suggestion from Lori as the city clerk to make things administratively easier by charging a single fee. I did give her a heads up that there'd likely be a referral to L&O.
This is a small percentage of the dogs in Middleton are actually licensed, correct? I mean, if you had to venture a guess, how many, and what happens when a dog gets loose and you get it and it's not licensed? You don't charge them a late fee?
It's green. I'm good. I'm not a dog expert on and I don't know our licensing that much. I would say it's a very small percentage in the city that are licensed. If we locate a dog that is not licensed, we usually warn the owner and we give them advice on how to register their dog, but we don't usually follow up on that either. It's not really something we want to get into. I don't know if I answer your question or if you have
Yes,
further.
it's very small percentage.
Yes,
Yeah, I
I
would
believe so.
guess way less than 20%, I would guess. So.
Well, and I worry less about the revenue from licensing and more about do we have a lot of unvaccinated dogs,
I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a real problem. So, okay. All right. So all those in favor of,
What is your recommendation? Just a
I'll read it again, and Bill, I'll email you this text. My motion is that council refer this matter to the License and Ordinance Committee for a recommendation with justification regarding A, what the specific fees should be for intact versus spayed or neutered dogs, and B, adding as required by Wisconsin statute 175.055, a $5 late fee per dog for licenses obtained on April 1st or later each year, with exceptions as needed for dogs acquired or moving into the city after that date. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. And finally, the update on the fourth quarter 2022 investment reports.
Would you like a 1-minute update or would you like to hold this over for the next meeting?
I'd like to defer to council.
This one's not on.
It's not on the council agenda.
On the council, well,
We can have it next time. We'd like to have you back next time, Bill. Sorry we had to bump you. Okay,
Ramsey, move to adjourn.
thank you.
Second, this is Alder Kuhn.
All right, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
We got 2 more minutes.